Welcome back to Never Did It. I'm Jake Ziegler, and I'm here with Brad Garoon. On Never Did It, we look back at the last 100 years of movie history in an effort to fill in some of our own movie blind spots. And today we're covering the year 2006. We've got a couple of movies that were produced outside of the United States that we'll be talking about. We've got one animated and one non-animated. Brad, what do you want to talk about first?
Let's talk about the animated one, because I just remembered something that I wish I had said last week, or brought up last week, and I didn't. It's Japanuary, which is fun.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if this started before Letterboxd, but Letterboxd put out an email. It said, tag your Japan movies in January. It's Japanuary, a month to celebrate Japanese movies. And last week we talked about Onibaba, a great Japanese movie. And today we'll be talking about The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, a not as great Japanese movie. A fine, a decent, a solid anime film. Not one of the greatest, but directed by a pretty prolific anime director, Mamoru Hosada. I saw this probably like 2-3 years ago at a time when I was really into watching time loop movies. I know you watch Groundhog Day every year on Groundhog Day. That's coming up too. So this is actually timely because I think that'll be in 4 days as of the day that we drop this.
Oh, okay, cool.
I had just watched Boss Level, which is an action one. Palm Springs had come out. That was kind of a pretty big hit in the COVID era. So this is another one, sort of. Actually, not really, because she's not stuck in a loop.
No, she's in control more of where she goes.
Yeah. But someone else is stuck in time in this movie. Yeah, this movie is about a girl who realizes she gets into an accident riding her bike with the train. The beginning of Io Shirai's old entrance music plays. When I learned that Io Shirai's entrance music was like the really well-known Tokyo subway or train coming sound, I was like, oh crap, that was so cool.
No, I didn't know that either. I was like, that's awesome. I was like, wait, because when I heard it, I was like, I've heard this before, and it took me a minute to put it all together.
Yeah, sorry, Io Sky, but it was when she was Io Shirai.
Right.
So this girl gets into a bike accident with a train, but goes back in time. She finds a tattoo on her arm, or a mark on her arm, which lets her know how many more jumps she has left, how many more time travels back she has left. This is a sequel, actually, to a novel. The ant character in the movie was the time traveler in the novel.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And then this girl tries to set everything right in her life. She uses it for kind of meaningless stuff a lot, but in some cases, bigger things. She does it once because she's embarrassed because her best friend professes his love to her. And then later on, spoiler alert, you find out that there's more interesting stuff going on with him. I guess not really a spoiler. I'll keep it a little vague. But it's a short movie. I feel like Hosada's stuff doesn't get the same kind of play in America that Miyazaki's does, or even that our boy Masaki Yuasa's stuff does.
What are some of his other movies?
I mentioned one a few weeks ago because it came up in one of my top 10s, or as an honorable mention maybe, Wolf Children, which is really good. I actually like it a lot better than The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, about a woman whose kids turn into wolves. And I think he also did Summer Wars, which I think you like.
I haven't seen that actually, but it's been on my list to watch.
I've seen Summer Wars. I don't like it as much, but it's very predictive of what's going on with VR and AI.
Mm-hmm.
So it's worth checking out for that reason. I just don't like the way the VR world in it looks, but the story is pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. And then he also did Boy and the Beast, which is one that I've really wanted to see. And two movies that a lot of people did see recently. He did Belle, which came out in 2021.
I actually really loved. I thought was really, really cool.
Mm-hmm. And Mirai, I think you've seen.
I have seen that one because that got nominated for Best Animated Film and actually didn't. I thought it was okay. I think I gave it 3 stars, but I remember being really disappointed in it because usually the Japanese films that get nominated for the Oscar are generally pretty good, for the most part, but I didn't care for Mirai all that much.
So, okay, so you as an Oscar guy are familiar with his work.
Yes. Yeah, I've seen The Girl Who Leapt Through Time and Belle and Mirai. Yeah.
That's a lot. I mean, compared to most non-anime American fans, that's a ton. That's 300% more than most people have seen.
Yeah.
And it's the same amount that I've seen, but different ones. Yeah, I've been wanting to watch Belle for a while. So yeah, he's one of the bigger anime filmmakers, and I just thought it'd be good to have him represented on the podcast. What did you think of The Girl Who Leapt Through Time?
I mirror a lot of the same thoughts that you had about it. Where it was I liked it enough, but it's a 3-star, maybe 3.5 star almost. It doesn't reach the heights of even some of these other romance movies involving. There's a lot of romance with teenagers in some of these movies that we've done, or the movies that we've watched recently. Compared to something like Look Back that we just saw recently, which just has so much more impactful, and maybe it has to do kind of with Look Back was so short, they just kind of crammed a lot into that time. And you mentioned some of the things she does with her time jumps are kind of these frivolous things. She's going back and redoing isn't test scores and stuff that happens in gym class and stuff. So a lot of the movie feels inconsequential until they get closer to the end, and then more things start happening. So I think there's kind of this kind of big lull kind of in the middle when she's first discovering the time traveling. That's unfortunately like not that interesting. They don't do much with it, but then I liked it more towards the end, and I thought it ended on a high note.
Yeah, I think the runtime thing that you bring up is really big. Yeah, Look Back it's all killer, no filler.
It's like 58 minutes. Yeah, it's so short.
I saw that in the theater, and it was so short that they added an interview with the director at the end of it. Because how else are they going to get people? I mean, I have unlimited, so I'm going. But I could see people being irritated. I loved it. I'm like, I love going to the theater for an hour. I can do something else afterwards.
Right, yeah. I mean, if it's a great movie, it's a great movie. At an hour or 3 hours and 20 minutes, as some other great movies tend to be. I mean, there's no magic length. You know, the right runtime is the right runtime for the story.
For sure. Yesterday, I saw Grand Theft Hamlet, which is not a great movie. Actually, it's probably about on the level of The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, and that's like a little over 90 minutes, and I was home for dinner. You know, it was easy. I like to see 2 movies in a day. You can't do that when one of them's even like 2.5 hours. That's like, well, that's the movie you're seeing today.
Yeah.
So with Look Back, I'm sure I paired that with something else. Anyway, Look Back is awesome. A little bit, the subject matter is a little bit heavier. You know, it's about like not a school shooter because they don't have guns in Japan, but a school killer.
Right.
So that, you know, it's not about him, but he is a factor in the movie. Yeah, Look Back's awesome. This is less awesome. That is that filmmaker's only movie. I forget his name.
Oh, okay.
That's his only thing. Mamoru Hosada is like super prolific, and I'm sure we'll get another movie from him pretty soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did a lot of Pokemon stuff too. I noticed in his filmography, he's kind of directed some of those Pokemon animated movies.
You'll see that where like a lot of these guys, I don't know if that's like a one for you, one for me thing. I truly don't know what the anime industry is like on the creative side, but you'll see a lot of like some One Piece stuff or Yu-Gi-Oh or something. So yeah, that stuff I tend to skip unless it's like Lupin the Third. That I'll watch because I mean, like Miyazaki got his start doing Lupin. So
yeah, I liked that movie, the one that the feature that came out a couple years ago.
The newer one.
Yeah, that was fun.
Have you seen Castle of Cagliostro?
No, never did it.
So you should check that out just to round out your Miyazaki list.
Yeah, that's another one. Yeah, it's been on the radar, on the list for years, and just never did it.
Yeah, so I love that we have this chance to like talk little anime as two white dudes in their 40s who don't actually know that much about anime, but not a ton to say about Girl Who Leapt Through Time. Again, it's 2006. We have this issue, so we're getting to near the end of our main series, where we're gonna have this issue a lot, where it's either a year where we haven't seen enough, so we're recommending the dregs. That's how Thunderball happened.
Yeah.
Or we've seen everything, like in a year like 2006. It's like, all right, well, you haven't seen this.
Yeah.
So here's like Girl Who Leapt Through Time. But that wasn't an issue for you. You recommended for me a really acclaimed movie that I just happen to have not seen.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I did. Yeah, the movie I recommended for you is called The Lives of Others. It was the Oscar winner for the best foreign film that year, and very famously actually defeated Pan's Labyrinth for that award.
Wow.
Yeah, and I remember when it happened, Lives of Others came out in 2006, but I saw it in 2007 because it didn't actually open in America until 2007, and then the Traverse City Film Festival played it in the summer of 2007. But of course, we had all seen Pan's Labyrinth when that came out because that was a big hit, played in theaters and everything. And I remember people just being mad, like, how does Pan's Labyrinth not win this award, for one movie everybody saw? And then I remember I went to Lives of Others with my friend Dan, and my mom actually came with us too. And then when it was over, like, okay, that's how it happens. And I can still see someone like preferring Pan's Labyrinth, but like we watch Lives of Others and you're like, okay, yeah, this is a quality film, and I can see why it connected with people.
The themes are very similar.
They definitely are. Long time since I've seen Pan's Labyrinth, but I have seen it a couple of times.
They're both anti-authoritarian movies.
Definitely. Yeah, big time. That's cool. Yeah, I should really watch Pan's Labyrinth again, now that I've seen Lives of Others recently. I'll tell you what it's about. It takes place in 1983, 1984, when Germany was still separated by the wall, and the Stasi were still basically ruling over East Germany, spying on everybody, wiretapping everything. I mean, their stated goal was basically to know everything, to learn everything and to know everything. So that's just kind of a terrifying time to be living in, a terrifying setting to be put in. The main character is a Stasi agent who is very committed to the cause, and he gets put in charge of listening into a playwright who has heretofore been, seen as an ally of the state, not dangerous at all, anything like that. But his girlfriend, he's dating a woman who is a very famous actress, and one of the high-ranking Stasi officials has an interest in her and basically wants to get the playwright out of the way so he can have her all to himself. So he assigns this Stasi agent to listen in on them and just get me anything, get any sort of evidence you can that he's subversive or a threat, whatever. So he starts listening in. This agent starts listening into them, and before we go too far into it, I think I can at least say that, as he's listening to this playwright and his girlfriend, he develops sympathy for them and empathy for them, and it kind of alters his whole basically alters his whole mindset, kind of changes what he will report. I think it's a really, really interesting setup for a movie and a really challenging main character because, while he's gaining sympathy for these people, you got to realize he's been a very dedicated and committed Stasi agent, and like that's pretty horrible thing to be. But then he kind of morphs into this more sympathetic character while still being a it's not quite like sympathizing with a Nazi, but I mean it's pretty close.
One bit of nuance that's left out is it's not just that he has empathy or sympathy for this couple, which he does. It's that he becomes disillusioned with the state because when he learns the reason that he's doing this tap, he's like, well, wait, this isn't for the good of socialism. They talk about like socialism's important. Socialism has to start somewhere. A few things are happening at the same time. One, he finds out what you said, that they're doing this because this guy has a crush. This guy's a rapist, this official. He's picking up this actress. He's blackmailing her because she gets medicine illegally, coercing her into having sex in his car. Weisler is getting to know his boss better. And they were friends in school, but his boss has now gone on to bigger things. He's a bureaucrat, while Weisler is this like expert surveillance guy.
The best of the best, yeah.
Yeah. And interrogator. And the stuff in the beginning where he's teaching his class how to do it. You know what? It's interesting. The stuff you're talking about, like it's not sympathizing with a Nazi, but it's similar. I mean, yes, it's sympathizing with authoritarians, is watching the humanity of the people that he's teaching. How they're learning these things, but these are just like kids they're kind of like making fun of it or being like, this is inhumane.
Yeah.
So they're pre-indoctrination kind of.
Yeah, well, it's really, there's that one little scene where the kid says it. He goes, that's inhumane. And you can see if he makes a little mark next to that kid's name where he sits, like, so they're going to be watching for that guy. Like, that's terrifying.
There's another scene like that, and this is showing his growth, Weisler's growth, where he's in an elevator at his house, and this little boy looks up at him, like a little boy, like 4 years old, says, "Are you really Stasi?" And he says, "What do you think Stasi means?" And he's like, "Well, you're the bad guys. That's what my dad says anyway." And he's about to ask, he goes, "And what is the name of your father?" So we can remark on it. And instead he says, "What is the name of your ball?" And because he's holding this ball, and the boy's like, "You're funny. Balls don't have names." But that was a great way to show his growth as a person without being like sanguine or expository about it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. Just these little tiny, and there's a lot of that in this movie, like little tiny moments that mean like much bigger things for the characters and for where they're going. Yeah.
The only one that I bumped up against is when Weisler steals a Western book from Georg is the name of the playwright. Yep. And then with all this like orchestral music playing in his apartment, he reads the book and it's like, oh, look at him, he's becoming Westernized. I was like, that's a little much.
Yeah, I could have dealt with it. Yeah, I could have lived without that too.
Yeah. But that's honestly, that's one of the only marks against this movie that I have. I thought this was gripping. I was very nervous the whole time. I never felt super attached to the playwright or his girlfriend. Mm-hmm. Much more attached to Wilhelm and like wondering how he's going to navigate the fact that he's already started doctoring these reports. Fortunately, that is what the movie ends up being about, because when the big culmination of the storyline with the playwright and his wife happens, it's a big deal. It's a big dramatic scene, but then it's sort of like they move on past it kind of quickly so that you focus in on, well, what does this mean for Weisler now? And that I really liked. I was like, okay, so it wasn't a mistake that I wasn't so invested in them, because I really am coming at this from Weisler's point of view. I'm seeing them as he sees them. They're objects, and they're objects that he cares about, but they're not the things that I'm supposed to be focusing on. Mm-hmm. So then we see the fallout for Weisler. The movie does have like multiple endings, and that can be handled well, but I thought it was a little sloppy here, where it starts like, okay, here's the climax of the movie, and then 4 years later, the wall has come down. 2 years later, here's another thing. 2 years later, is this movie going to be over? What is going on?
Little Return of the Kingy there, but where they eventually get to, I think was really perfect. Like I really love where he goes into the
bookstore.
Yeah, and we can go ahead and spoil how the whole thing ends, because it takes, and having seen it now a couple of times too, like definitely agree, like there's that multiple endings, and some people will certainly bump up against that, but I think they all kind of established some very important things. I mean, it's not the playwright. Well, what ends up happening, the culmination of the playwright and his girlfriend, the actress, she betrays him, totally sells him out to the Stasi.
Yes and no. I mean, like she does, but in like an ineffectual way. She says that he's subversive, but not where the evidence is. Mm-hmm. And then when she does finally give up the evidence, it's at the encouraging of Weisler, who is sort of like, who has met her once before, but didn't say who he was. Mm-hmm. And he's sort of like hinting like, I'm going to take care of this. Just tell us everything. And he does, but she's broken by that point, and
and runs out into the street and throws herself in front of a truck and dies, obviously. The playwright, he ends up writing a book because he finds out, he goes in and looks at all the records, because the records are declassified, that the Stasi kept, once the wall comes down, which obviously was why it was very important to show the wall coming down. So, he goes and looks at all the records, and he kind of sees, like, what these reports were, and he recognizes that it's like, okay, this is all made up. This guy was, like, told, whoever this code name was, it was, like, HGX7, or, well, yeah, so he sees this guy basically saved his life, which he didn't really, he didn't know. He wasn't aware of, like, any of that stuff. So, and then once he finds it out, he writes a book about it, and he does the dedication to, HWXX-7, and, Weisler sees it, and he opens it up, and he buys it at a bookstore, and the guy asks him, do you want this gift wrap? And he says, no, it's for me. Which is like, I think it's just such a perfect ending, and that makes the multiple endings more palatable for me, to have it end on such a good note.
Sure. My only issue is I actually didn't need to see him doing the detective work, because it's a lot of just, like, staring, and we already know all of it. Right? So my thing is, this is kind of a pet peeve of mine for movies, is I don't like getting somewhere before a character does. Sometimes it's fun. It's like, oh, I figured it out. But in this case, it's like, I didn't figure anything out. They told me.
Right.
They showed me all of this already, and now they're telling it to me after I've already seen it shown to me. It wasn't, like, so interesting for me to see him learn it. I think and this is armchair directing, it's annoying, but it would have been more interesting to skip that part and just see Weisler go by the bookstore and see that he'd written a book and see that it was for him. I think that would have been pretty cool.
Or at the very least, we could have maybe, even just scaled it back to show the playwright. You could show him, like, going into the records place and, like, seeing, like, the big pile of records that they kept on him.
Totally.
And then they don't have to show him, like, looking through all of them. Like,
right.
To tighten that up a little bit there. But there's also this other great scene at the end too. He meets up with the rapist, the main bad guy who is having him spied on. And through the whole movie, Georg doesn't realize that he's being surveilled. He thinks he's not. Like, even though he's being surveilled the whole time, like, they really believe he's not.
Because he did that test to see if he was being surveilled, and it's actually funny because Weisler isn't actually being smart in that moment. Yeah, he thinks he's doing him a favor by not having his friend be captured, but whether or not the friend was captured was to test if there was surveillance. So he accidentally screws him by doing a nice thing for him.
Yeah, he makes it more difficult for both of them actually going forward in that scene, and I love that sequence too, because that's another, like, tense, like you said, it was tense and, like, really, like, oh my gosh, like, what are they, is he going to do this for them? And he does. You kind of wish he hadn't, but also understand why he does. Very, very cool. But when Georg runs into the main bad guy, and he asks him, why didn't you ever surveil me? He's like, what are you talking about? We did. You were under full surveillance. Like, go look under your light switches. And then he goes back and has that Gene Hackman conversation moment, where he's just tearing up the whole apartment, and that I thought was kind of a cool thing to see too. So I mean, like I said, I recommend this movie for you because I love it. It's one of my favorite movies.
I'm glad I've seen it. I liked it a lot. I think I may have underrated it 4.5 stars. I mean, at 4 stars, because the last thing I saw was this Return of the King ending thing, and I was like, come on.
That was the one film festival. My mom did film festival with me that year too, and she saw, I don't know, probably like 10 or 12 movies with me that year. Downtown Traverse City is right next to a harbor. That was when they had a boat, so they had their boat done there. So, like, we'd go down to the boat between movies and have snacks and talk about what we saw. And Lives of Others was one that my mom really loved too when she saw it. I remember just getting to experience that with her. There's not a ton of movies that I've seen with just my mom, and so good memories for me there. I mean, film festival is obviously was a big thing for me when it was alive.
It's a great movie, and everyone that I told I was about to watch it was like, oh my god, it's so devastating. I actually didn't find it to be that devastating. I mean, there's the one devastating scene, but I was thrilling. We haven't said this yet, but the director's name is Florian Maria Georg Christian Graf Henckel von Donnersmarck. He doesn't go by all that. He goes by something shorter, Florian Henckel von Donnersmarck. But that's who we're dealing with. And he's not very prolific. I think he's only made like 4 features.
Or 3, I think, looks like.
One of them is your favorite movie, The Tourist.
Oh my gosh, yeah, The Tourist is so bad. That was his first American movie, and I'll be honest, I was excited for that. I'm not a huge Johnny Depp fan or Angelina Jolie fan, but I was like, oh, this guy from The Lives of Others is making an American movie. This is going to be awesome. It's not. It's terrible. It's like almost unwatchable, just garbage. And I don't think it was his fault either. I think there was a lot of studio meddling and dealing with personalities like Johnny Depp and Angelina Jolie. Whatever you may or may not feel about them, they're certainly big stars and would certainly throw their weight around on a film like that with an experienced director.
I always think about when people talk about getting excited over an international director coming to America. I think it's Nikolai is how you pronounce his name. Nikolai Arcel or Archel, whatever. He did The Dark Tower. He came over to America to do The Dark Tower. And he was like, I'm never going to work in Hollywood again.
Who can blame him?
It doesn't always work out.
Yeah, well, the other von Donnersmarck film is and he went back into German film called Never Look Away. That came out in 2018 and ended up also nominated for the Best International Film, and also picked up a cinematography nomination, which is one of those like Oscar morning things where people are like, "What the hell is this movie?" But so I mean, his two German films have been acclaimed. Never Look Away is significantly not as good as Lives of Others, but it's also like 3 hours long. But I remember it being good. I just watched it once when it came out.
Do we want to do our, just since we're at the end, should we do our top 10s of 2006?
Yeah, because I already covered the Oscar thing. Obviously, Girl Who Leapt Through Time was nothing, and then Lives of Others, even though it was qualified for all the awards in 2006, only managed to get, they called it at the time foreign language film. It's international film now, but it did win that, and like I said, won over Pan's Labyrinth, so it's that's no small feat.
I'll go first. How about that? All right, real quick, I'm going to run through my honorable mentions because The Lives of Others is in them. Although now that I'm looking at it, I kind of wish I changed it, but whatever. I'm going to do it how I do it.
Yep.
Real quick, my 10 honorable mentions, as I like to do with these newer ones. Jackass #2, lots of fun. The Good Shepherd, which was directed by Robert De Niro. I saw this in the theaters. Is there a chance we saw this together in the theater?
Yes, maybe, because I remember it played at the Rave when I was working at the Rave Cinema. So we might have gone to see that together.
I really like this movie a lot. It was kind of my dumb college kid introduction to the Bay of Pigs.
I haven't seen it since the theater either, so I don't remember it very well.
I just remember liking it a lot. A lot of people kind of dog it now. Maybe it's kind of boring, but I thought it was really cool. Matt Damon's great in it. Crank is a really crazy action movie.
I love Crank, yeah.
Yeah, I think people should check that out. Idiocracy, if it might feel a little real now.
It's just like the movie Idiocracy. Like, okay, 8 million people have said this before you. Like, you don't need to keep saying that. Like,
the thing that's most true is people masturbate too much. That's the truest thing about Idiocracy. Yep. Mark Forster's Stranger Than Fiction is pretty good. It's one of Will Ferrell's better, like, more straight performances.
Emma Thompson,
yeah, as the narrator / author. Dustin Hoffman's really good in it too.
Oh yeah.
Satoshi Kon's Paprika. So people call this the inspiration for Inception.
Oh.
I didn't quite see it that way when I watched Paprika. It is like a crazy mindfuck of a movie. But it's Satoshi Kon. He only made 4 movies. They're all pretty good to amazing. Like, I think Tokyo Godfathers is a masterpiece. Perfect Blue, also very, very good. Paprika, I remember being like, I thought this would be better. But it's solid. Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest is on here for me. This has some of the best visual effects you'll ever see in any movie ever. Bill Nighy as Davy Jones is like still not topped. Like people all the time will talk about how this movie looked like this, and they can't make realistic looking creatures anymore like this. And it's an industry problem, not a technology problem. Yep. It's really worth watching this movie, if for nothing else than the CGI.
Oof, I don't know if I can sit through it again, but I'll take your word.
Give it a shot. Pan's Labyrinth is on here too. We talked about that quite a bit. Did not win Best International Film, Foreign Film.
For an international film, like 6 total nominations, like that's amazing.
Yeah. I've got Nancy Meyer's The Holiday. It's one of my favorite Christmas movies. Jack Black's just so charming in it. Jude Law, I want to have sex with Jude Law in this movie.
Absolutely. I mean, I'd give it up for him. I'd give it all up.
Cameron Diaz is probably the weak link, and she's still so much fun. And then, of course,
Kate Winslet.
Kate Winslet. It's the most you'll ever love. You'll love her to death. Just terrific. It's also like a fun movie about Hollywood a little bit. And Eli Wallach plays this old, Hollywood macher who thinks he's been forgotten. And the only unbelievable thing about this movie is that they got a commemorative event for him together in one day.
You're right.
But it's also a movie where Hanukkah is mentioned, which is actually kind of rare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then my last honorable mention is The Lives of Others, which probably deserves to be in the top 10, which I will start now. Mission Impossible 3. This was the first great Mission Impossible movie. The Mission Impossible 1, it's a De Palma movie, so it's slower. Really takes its time. Is not, aside from the big heist scene and the finale, does not feel like a Mission Impossible movie in the same way. Feels more like a sequel to the TV show. And Mission Impossible 2 is fine, like a fine action movie, but not very good.
Yeah, very forgettable.
This was directed by J.J. Abrams. It's after Star Wars. It's like, wow, the difference between what he was doing in Mission Impossible and what he did with Star Wars is wild. Really great stuff. My number 9 is Nick Cassavetes' Alpha Dog. We talked about Anton Yelchin recently. This was, I think, the movie where I was like, wow, Anton Yelchin's really good. Mm-hmm. Justin Timberlake's quite good in this movie. Ben Foster is really good. Bruce Willis and Sharon Stone are both in this. Harry Dean Stanton has like a pretty important role in this movie, actually. And then, of course, Emile Hirsch as like the most vile person in the world. My number 8 is Little Miss Sunshine, which was directed by Jonathan Dayton and Valerie Faris, who have like not done a ton since then. Like Battle of the Sexes, I think, is pretty bad. I know some people I know you really like Ruby Sparks.
I do like Ruby Sparks quite a bit, yeah. And Battle of the Sexes I thought was okay.
Yeah, I didn't like it. I liked, and I thought Ruby Sparks was just okay. I did enjoy Fleischman is in Trouble, which was a TV show that they worked on with not Claire Danes. Is it Claire Danes? Yeah, I don't know why I'm saying not Claire Danes. Yes, Claire Danes.
Yeah, and Jesse Eisenberg.
Jesse Eisenberg and Adam Brody, starting his hot Jewish guy streak that he's back on now with Nobody Wants This. Little Miss Sunshine's incredible. Alan Arkin finally got the Oscar that he always wanted. There's a great, I think I've told the story on the or relayed this story on the podcast before, but David Krumholtz told this great story about working with Alan Arkin on Slums of Beverly Hills and how just like grumpy he is in general and how much he thought he deserved an Oscar.
Oh.
And so he finally got it. Abigail Breslin's really cute. This is like a lot of people's intro to Paul Dano. And then, of course, like Steve Carell, Toni Collette, and Greg Kinnear are incredible. Yeah, story about a family that drives across the country so that the daughter can be in this beauty pageant that she really has no business being in, and then the great lengths they go for each other at the end of the movie. It's very cute. My number 7 is Clint Eastwood's Letters from Iwo Jima, which was part of a 2-hitter that he did with Flags of Our Fathers, showing the Allied and Japanese side of World War II. This movie is dark. For one thing, it like phases in and out of black and white. Like it gets desaturated and resaturated, but mostly it feels like it's almost in black and white for most of the movie. And there's a lot of like kamikaze jumping on a grenade because your squad is going to lose. And so to not be taken prisoner, a lot of these men are ordered to hold grenades to their chest. It's a really dark, tough to watch movie, but very good. I liked it quite a bit more than Flags of Our Fathers.
Yeah, and I think Flags of Our Fathers is good, but I mean, Letters from Iwo Jima is like upper echelon. For people who maybe don't quite understand this, Clint Eastwood directed a film entirely in Japanese. Kind of mind-blowing just to think about that.
He's a great filmmaker.
He really is. Like, he's gotten weird in his old age, whatever, but like, he's still got it.
Has he gotten that weird, or is he just an old Republican? I mean, like, is that weird? That's half the country. I don't know if it's that weird. I don't agree with it, but it's, he's still making good movies.
You see, yeah, Juror number 2 is really, really good.
My number 6 is Black Snake Moan, which was directed by Craig Brewer, who we've talked about before because he also directed Dolomite Is My Name, which has shown up on other lists of ours. He directed Hustle and Flow. He also, unfortunately, directed Coming to America, number 2. But Black Snake Moan is this great little, we were talking about last week, sort of movies that sort of feel like experiments. This is kind of like an experiment of a movie where Christina Ricci plays a girl who has drug and sex addiction problems. Justin Timberlake is her PTSD-inflicted boyfriend. And Samuel L. Jackson plays an old black man, this all takes place in the South, who sees the struggles that Christina Ricci's going through, and in order to help her, chains her to his radiator to basically put her through detox. The, racial and sexual politics that go along with that. It's a pretty racy movie. I think it's amazing.
It's pretty bold, yeah.
Definitely audacious. I like the movie a lot. My number 5 is Casino Royale. Daniel Craig's first James Bond movie, which was, of course, directed by Martin Campbell, who has given us GoldenEye, which was great, my favorite Bond movie, and also Green Lantern, which is less great. But this is such a cool movie, and Mads Mikkelsen is the villain, and he pulverizes Daniel Craig's balls. It's a very cool movie. He cries blood. Compare Largo in Thunderball, which we talked about last week, to the Chief in Casino Royale, and it's like, what are we doing?
Yeah, we've come a long way.
My number 4 is Martin Scorsese's The Departed, which is a remake of the Korean film Infernal Affairs, which I've never seen.
But Departed is better.
Yeah, Departed's great. So it was probably Jack Nicholson's final great role. He did some stuff after this, but none of it was too noteworthy. His last movie was a James L. Brooks movie, which was weird.
Yeah, that movie's not good, and the bucket list I thought sucked. And
The Departed's dope. Career best performances for DiCaprio. Not best, but up there. DiCaprio, Damon. I mean, probably career best for Wahlberg, if not Boogie Nights. And
yeah, we're certainly in the top 3.
Yeah, Anthony Anderson's good in a small role. Martin Sheen. The list goes on and on and on.
Infernal Affairs 2 actually has 2 sequels. The Hong Kong film has 2 sequels. Yeah,
which sure does. I don't know how The Departed would do that. Everybody died.
Everybody dies. Yeah, it would be hard to do without making it a prequel.
My number 3 is one of my favorite Christopher Nolan films, The Prestige, which if you listen to my review of The Count of Monte Cristo last week, I think those 2 movies have a lot in common. Yeah, The Prestige is great. Hugh Jackman tearing it up as a magician against 2 versions, spoiler alert, of Christian Bale. Great turn from Scarlett Johansson. Rebecca Hall, also very good in it. And then one of David Bowie's, like, very good movie turns. Anthony Serkis is really fun in this one. But the thing that you watch The Prestige for is the twists and the turns in Nolan's filmmaking. It's so good. My number 2 is Spike Lee's Inside Man. 2006, great year for, like, big timer directors. Inside Man is my second favorite Spike Lee movie, just a really cool heist movie that's also about sticking it to a Nazi, which is, a nice bonus at the end of the day. Jodie Foster as like kind of a villain, really cool turn for her. And then Denzel is awesome as always. Chiwetel Ejiofor is cool. Willem Dafoe really downplaying it as just like a cop. I'm always surprised to see him like do basically nothing in that movie. Clive Owen. This movie made me fall in love with Clive Owen. But Clive Owen is in both my number 1 and number 2 movies of 2006 because my number 1 is Alfonso Cuarón's Children of Men. For my money, the best modern sci-fi movie, modern being like post-2000 or even post-1990 sci-fi movie about a world where children have stopped being born and then a pregnant woman appears and what to do with this woman. Clive Owen, incredible as a nihilistic, dejected person who's just trying to like get through, a former activist who is then called back into activism when this baby appears. Julianne Moore is a former flame of his. She's great. She and Chiwetel Ejiofor want him to bring this baby. Well, they both have different ideas of what to do with this pregnant woman and how to deal with her and use her as a beacon of either hope or rebellion for the downtrodden in this dystopian world. Michael Caine is so funny. He's like the only joy in this really downbeat movie. And it features one of the coolest tracking shots you'll ever see in a really tense driving scene. I mean, Cuarón is known for his tracking shots, but this one, crazy stuff.
Black Snake Moan and Alpha Dog, I thought both came out in 07.
They might be Letterboxd Festival date.
Okay, yeah, because I think because it was like early 07, so I understand why they're 06 on Letterboxd. But yeah, I remember them both because I remember they both came out when I was working at the Rave. I remember opening them and people did not like Black Snake Moan.
Well, that's what happens when you're in suburban Michigan.
Mm-hmm. Kalamazoo.
Black Snake Moan is awesome. Shut up.
Yeah, I do. I like it too. I like it. Yeah, I like it.
I'm not telling you to shut up.
Oh, them to shut up. Yeah. All right, let me hit. I'll hit my honorable mentions. I do want to say that just 2 of yours, Mission Impossible 3 and Inside Man, fell just outside of my top 20, which speaks to how good of a year I think this is. 2006 is a very strong year. I'll just run through my honorable mentions real fast. Some of them we've already at least mentioned in some fashion. Gavin Hood's Satsi, South African drama that was the best foreign film winner that year, came out. Pedro Almodovar's Volver, starring Penelope Cruz. Bill Condon's Dreamgirls is in my honorable mention. Really fun musical, great Eddie Murphy performance. Forrest Whitaker's Oscar-winning The Last King of Scotland performance, or film. The film Last King of Scotland is in my honorable mention. Stranger Than Fiction, which we already talked about, is an honorable mention for me too. Very enjoyable movie. Ryan Gosling's first Oscar nomination was for a film called Half Nelson, where he's a crack-addicted wrestling coach, high school teacher. Very, very cool movie. Great performance from Sharika Epps in that as well as one of his students. Little Miss Sunshine is an honorable mention for me. I saw that the same year Film Fest, or maybe it was the year before I saw The Lives of Others, but saw Little Miss Sunshine with festival audiences, before it had opened wide. So, and I saw it twice because I was getting paid to do those screenings. So I got to see it, twice with 2 different audiences, and it was a delight both times. Another strong film festival memory for me. Another film that I love that I feel like I'm almost alone when I talk about, but I love Aquila and the Bee, about Aquila and the spelling bee. Yeah, I think it's...
I mean, never did it.
Oh, it's one of those movies that's like just surprising, like how enjoyable it is. Where you feel like, oh yeah, this will be okay, and then it's just like Lawrence Fishburne is like the spelling coach, I guess, like her coach or whatever, and he's so good in it. And it's a movie that just kind of surprised me with how much I loved it.
How alone could you be? It's got an 86% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, does it? Okay, well, good.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like people don't like often talk about it.
It's a movie about a girl who wins a spelling bee. I mean, it's not going to stand the test of time.
It's a delight. And then the ones who just missed out of my top 10 at 12 and 11, movies we've talked about a lot, The Prestige and Pan's Labyrinth. Great year for movies. My number 10, as you've just already talked about quite a bit, is Cuarón's Children of Men. Brilliant. I mean, Cuarón, Clive Owen, Michael Caine, yeah, all good stuff. Number 9 for me is Stephen Frears' The Queen, starring Helen Mirren as the Queen. Her best performance by far. You've got Michael Sheen in that, James Cromwell. Just a terrific movie. Number 7 is one that my wife likes a lot too, that we reference from time to time. Richard Ere's Notes on a Scandal, starring Cate Blanchett and Judi Dench. Do you know this movie? Yo, you don't know Notes on a Scandal?
I know that it exists, but I never did it.
Oh, yeah, that's, Cate Blanchett is a high school teacher who, starts an affair with one of her 15-year-old students, and Judi Dench finds out about it, and then she wants to torment Cate Blanchett with this information. So really cool, like, psychological warfare in there. I mean, Cate Blanchett and Judi Dench, 2 of our greatest ever. They're going head-to-head. Also got an amazing Philip Glass score. Very cool. Number 7, we've talked about Todd Field's Tar quite a bit on our podcast, but almost equally as good is his Little Children, also starring Kate Winslet, Patrick Wilson, Jennifer Connelly, and an amazing performance from Jackie Earle Haley. Just a lot of drama going on. It's been, not a fan.
It's just like a gross gross role. I mean,
Oh,
he's
so
no,
gross. I
it's
mean,
very, it's supposed to be, but it's gross.
it is supposed to be, yeah, and he got an Oscar nomination for it. I mean, he really committed to it. It's, terrific performance. Really, really dramatic movie. Another one that my wife likes quite a bit. So we've talked about that. I want to watch the other Todd Field movie with her in the bedroom. She's never seen it. But Todd Field, I mean, 3 for 3, amazing. Number 6, another one we talked about quite a bit, Letters from Iwo Jima. Yeah, just a really, really impressive movie. One of the better war films, certainly in the last couple of decades. My number 5 is Paul Greengrass's United 93, his retelling of, fated Flight 93 from September 11th. There's not much characterization in the movie. It's really more kind of focused on the events. It's been, I think I only saw it the one time in the theater, and I don't know if I could, I'm not sure that I could watch it again. It's very difficult to get through, but it's extremely well constructed. Like, if you've ever liked a Paul Greengrass movie, I mean, this one is as good as he gets. And it also takes place in real time. So, I mean, it's oh my gosh, it's so tense, and so it's tough. It's a tough watch. My number 4 is an Australian Western directed by John Hillcoat, starring Guy Pearce and Danny Huston. It's called The Proposition. Just an insane movie. The Guy Pearce character is trying to go save his youngest brother, who has to track down and kill his older brother, who's wanted. So one is just great, desolate Australian cinematography in it, and everything is great. It's just kind of like a dirty, it's a great movie. I really loved it. Saw it a couple of times when it came out. Big Guy Pearce fan. We talked about him a little bit when we talked about The Brutalist, and he's just been so good in so many things for so long. And with films like The Proposition and The Rover and some of these things that maybe are a little bit less seen, he's just really, really kills it. And he's pretty ripped in it too. But it's another tough one, but I really, really loved it. My top 3 movies we've already talked about. My number 3 is The Departed, which, yeah, is just such for 2.5 hours, movie just goes by so fast. There's just so many characters all doing interesting things, giving good performances. It's just a fantastic movie. My number 2 is one we talked about at great length, The Lives of Others. And then my number 1, as I've talked about before, I'm such a big James Bond fan, is Casino Royale. I was just thrilled when I saw it at the theater. The opening song, the Chris Cornell song, I mean, Chris Cornell's like my favorite vocalist ever, so I love that song. Lashif is a great villain with the blood, and Ava Green is a great counterpart to Daniel Craig in this movie. The action scenes are great. It's just, it's awesome. It's an introduction to a whole new type of James Bond that we really hadn't seen before, and it spawned 4 further Bond movies, and kind of Bond's the first time they ever told like a story like throughout Bond movies. Like, most of them were just kind of like the Connerys and the Moores. Like, there's some connections to them, but there's not like a single thread. Whereas like, you start Casino Royale and get to No Time to Die, it's like a long kind of storyline thread through that, which Bond really hadn't done before. And Casino Royale kicked it all off and was really, really great.
Yeah, I actually don't think it was so great.
Mm.
I mean, I think Casino Royale was great, and I think Skyfall is very good. But I think, given where it ended with No Time to Die, I didn't get that much out of it being so Mission Impossible-ized.
Mm-hmm. It was just different for Bond. They just hadn't done that before. It was the first time they tried it. Yeah.
It's good to try different things. Like, now what I wish they would try, and I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before, let someone have a stab at being Bond for one movie. Like, let's just see the Aaron Taylor Johnson Bond movie. Let's just see the Tom Hardy Bond movie. Let's see the Idris Elba Bond movie. Even now, like, he's old, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, let's just see it. So it doesn't have to be the franchise. It can just be a oneer.
Right.
They're so precious about this damn franchise. It's going to be, I just read that like something happened. We're not going to get another Bond movie for like a long time.
That's a shame.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll be back next week with a special guest, Professor Jeff, to talk about Days of Heaven and Death on the Nile, the good one.